Let's make a statement component with a bezel made from SuperDuos. This fabulous project can then be turned into an on-trend brooch or bold pendant. We need just 5 different supplies for this project: a rivoli, SuperDuo beads, 2 sizes of seed beads and tiny 2mm pearls. Hi, I'm Chloe Menage. I'm a beadwork designer and tutor. Shall we get beading?
Here's what we're going to need to get started. So to make your SuperDuo Passion, you're going to need SuperDuos, 1 18mm rivoli, 2mm druk beads or pearls, and size 15 and size 11 Miyuki seed beads. All of the colours for this particular one have been taken from my Fruit Punch palette, which is a collaboration with Eureka Beads, and you can find all the supplies for that curated into one place, and the link for that is in the description below, so do check that out. And I just love this colourway. What I have done today for the purposes of the video is I've substituted the size 11s with a bright contrasting colour, and this one works well when you've got size 15s and 11s in the same colour, but that's not going to be very helpful for you guys today on screen. So I've popped in a really nice bright orange, but I think you'll be really surprised how wonderful this looks. So if you do love the palette but want to include the orange, then just go ahead and add yourself some Miyuki bright orange into the mix. But this is the original colourway, and as I mentioned, it looks great when you've got seed beads of the same colour. So we're going to get started. I'm using a 1G thread today, but you could use KO or Fireline or whatever your thread of choice is. I've cut myself about a wingspan, so about 1.5 meters of thread. I'm going to wax it and stretch it out well before I start working. And we're going to begin by creating our SuperDuo bezel. So I'm picking up a seed bead, a SuperDuo and a seed bead. This is the size 11 ones, guys. And I'm going to be alternating those. And we're going to be picking up 16 of each. And you're going to want to double count this number. It sounds obvious, but I'm not going to lie, I have got quite far through the project. It's not until you begin adding the petals right at the end that you will find that you have got the wrong count. So it's better to find out now, obviously, than having to redo the entire project. So 16 is our magic number for this, and we're going to add them all on and join them into a ring. Don't forget you can find the PDF tutorial for this project over on my website. It's got all of the step-by-step tutorial steps, including diagrams and photos to help you, as well as extra tips and techniques, a list of all my colourways and some extra bits of info. So if you'd like that, do head over to my website, pinkheart.co.uk, where you can find that for purchase today. So once you've got 16 of each, and you're definitely sure you've got 16 of each, I would also, it's worth checking that all of the holes, the second holes are all open as well. Sometimes you do get with these coated SuperDuos, some of them can get clogged. Sometimes it's possible to clear them out with an awl, sometimes not so much. So it's worth just checking now to avoid yourself a bit of a pain later on. So once you've got all 16, we're going to tie those into a ring, and we're going to leave a tail thread of about 15 centimeters, and we might need that later depending on whether we're turning into a brooch or a pendant. So I'm going to tie that into a double knot to keep that secure, and then I'm going to reinforce that by passing through all of these beads once again. And this is really important, it keeps it all secure and stops anything pulling out as you're working. And I would reinforce each of the SuperDuo rounds that we're going to be doing. Once you've reinforced that, we're going to step up. So we're going to exit from the SuperDuo and step up by passing through the second hole in the same SuperDuo. And that's going to change our direction and make us go in the opposite direction. So I'm now going to just simply pick up a SuperDuo and pass through the second hole of the next SuperDuo round. And we're just going to repeat that all the way around until we've got a SuperDuo between the second hole of each of our first row SuperDuos. When we get back to the beginning, I recommend reinforcing that once more by passing through all of the beads that you've passed through in this row already, and that's going to really help with your next step. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you'll find that the row before starts to really pull out as you're working, and it just causes a bit of a headache. So make sure you reinforce that round, and then you'll be ready for the next round. Once that's reinforced, we can step up again by just coming out of one of the new SuperDuos we've just added, and step up by passing into the second hole of that same SuperDuo. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing again. So we're going to add a third row of SuperDuos in exactly the same way, picking up a new one and passing through the second hole of that second row of SuperDuos, and just repeating that all the way around. So as we get back to the beginning, we're going to reinforce that round once again. Do keep quite a firm tension, and you'll see that it begins to cop up and pull round into more of a band shape. So just keeping a nice firm tension, especially as you do that reinforcing round. Oh, losing my thread. So yeah, just nice firm tension like that. And you can see how it's all starting to slot together and look a bit more like a bezel now. Once it's nicely reinforced, we're going to step up by passing through the second hole to come out the top of one of the new SuperDuos. And we're now going to pop our rivoli in place, and that's face up, and we're going to start to pull in this row now by adding a size 11 between each of the second holes of the SuperDuos. And you want to keep a nice firm tension with this as you work, and you'll really see how it's going to pull in and start to become an actual bezel. I mentioned at the beginning about checking the second holes. Sometimes they do sneak through, and this is a good example of why it's worth checking them. But I just wanted to show you that sometimes it is possible to break them out, and I'll just show you how to do that. So I've got my trusty awl, and I'm holding it very carefully and just going to push that against through the hole. And usually it's just with these ones, it's a case of the paint, and you can see that's come through. What you can also do is put it against an eraser and push through to protect your finger, but that one I didn't have to push very hard. It was just a tiny bit of paint. If you do have to push hard, just watch those fingers and do it against something like an eraser rather than against your hand to protect your fingers. Once you've got back to the beginning, you're going to work through and reinforce that round again, and I'd probably reinforce this twice more. There's a lot of tension going on here, and we want to make sure it's nice and tight and secure. So you're going to reinforce that twice more. Once you're happy with the reinforcement, we're going to step back over to the other side of our SuperDuo and pass through to come out from one of the middle row beads on this side. Now it's worth mentioning here, I've used a really contrasting thread. It's really helpful for you on the camera to be able to see it, but it is quite visible. So you may need to be careful when choosing to find something that matches quite nicely with the SuperDuos. Generally, this one I use a light brown thread, and you really can't see it very well in there. Can't really see the step up, it's blended in quite nicely. The orange, not so much, it is very visible. And I think it's still going to be visible when I get these next layers on. So it's great for the camera to show you what I'm doing, but you will need to just take that into consideration when choosing your thread colours. So we're going to pick up a size 11 and one of the 2 mils and another size 11. And then, so this is working in the second row here. I'm going to go straight into the same hole on the opposite. So we're keeping in this middle row. I'm working on, if I look at it from this side, the right hand hole, and I'm always going into the right hand hole of that central SuperDuo, and repeating that around, and you're going to get this really pretty little picot effect that really reminds me of those central bits on a passion flower plant, and they really are beautiful flowers, and this project came out. I'm sorry if you can hear that bird in the background. We have got beautiful buzzards nesting in the tree next door. She is absolutely amazing, but my goodness, is she noisy. She just does that constantly on and off all day. And I am in my studio at home. I am not soundproofed, and it's a lovely day, so the window is open, but that's what you can hear in the background. So once you get back to the beginning, It may be getting a little tight in there, but this is what you'll be left with, and I think that looks beautiful, just as I say, it's sort of simpler pendant on its own as well. So if you wanted to stop here, you could, but we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to create these beautiful dimensional petals using peyote stitch. So let's carry on. So we're going to step across to come out of the same SuperDuo that we're coming out of, but the other hole. We're working on across the back of the pendant now. So we're going to pick up one size 11 and one size 15, and you're going to do that 4 times so that you've got 4 of each bead on your needle. And then once you've got that, we're going to add 1 extra size 11. So you'll end up with 5 size 11s and 4 size 15s. And we're working into the back hole of this central row all the way around, but we're going to skip the next one and go into the one after. And this is where, remember where I said, if you hadn't got the count right in the initial row, this is where you're going to find that out the hard way. And I'm saying that from experience. Definitely done that a couple of times in making these samples. So we skipping the next one, going into the one after. And you're going to do that all the way around to create these pretty little petals. And you can see here why I chose to use contrasting colours for the video, because it makes it a lot easier to see which beads are which. But I do love this orange foot sample and how it's coming together. So I'm really excited to see how the petals look with the orange and the goldy colour. This muscat bead you will find as one of the staples in my fruit punch collection, and that's because I think it's possibly my all-time favourite bead colour. It is a Duracoat, so the colour lasts, and I use it in so many projects, and I love that it really changes colour depending what you put it with. Sometimes it can be kind of rose gold, sometimes it appears copper, sometimes it appears very orange, and I love that about that bead. So you'll find it in quite a few of my creations and as the staple in my fruit punch collection. And just again, when you're adding these, do double count that you've definitely picked up the right amount all the way along. It's very easy to mistake that, and again, you won't find out until you get to the next round if you've made a mistake, so do be checking these as you go. So once you've got 8 loops, we're ready to start the next part. So you're going to pass through so you're exiting from a SuperDuo, we're going to pass through the first size 11 here. And we're going to peyote a little row of size 11s. So we're picking up one, skipping the 15 and going through the next bead. And this is going to we want to force the size 15s to the bottom. They're going to become the back of our petal. So I'll just show you how that's going to look. We're picking up one, again skipping the 15 and going through the 11. And doing it again. So 3 more times to add 4 in total, and then when you get to the end you're going to pass through that SuperDuo. It can be a little bit tight. Sometimes it's handy to have one of those trusty bent needles, an old one that it's been battered, but they are handy. And then you're going to pass through the first size 11, and we're going to repeat that again. So you're going to be doing this all the way around. So when you get back to the beginning, you're going to end up with a pretty little pattern starting to emerge, and you may see that some of your petals are already starting to curve as well. And we're going to finish by stepping up into one of the new beads that we've just added. However, I'm running quite short of thread. You can cut a longer thread at the beginning, but I think anything more than the recommended wingspan that I mentioned at the beginning, and you are going to get yourself in a tangle and you're going to be more likely to have knots as well. So we've done quite a lot of reinforcing, and that eats our thread. So I'm going to add in some new thread, and it's really easy to do that. So we're going to start, first of all, we're just going to weave this thread in and finish it. So I'm just going to pass through a few different beads You can either go into the SuperDuos if you've got space, or just work along this bottom row of the peyote, because we're not going to need those 15s again, so it doesn't matter if we fill those up. So just weaving along through those. Oh no, I've lost my needle, it's because I'm working with such a short length. So yeah, you're going to just work in through those 11s and 15s just to kind of secure your thread, and then we start a new thread in exactly the same way, so just weaving through the previous 11s and 15s until you've managed to secure your thread. You can pop in some half hitch knots. There's not a huge amount of room in here though, so I'd avoid it if you can, because you don't want to block some beads that you might need later. We aren't, however, going to need those 15s again, so if you did do a half hitch knot, pop it in between there somewhere. So yeah, you can weave that in and then start a new thread in the same way. So we're going to exit from a SuperDuo. This is the last row of size 11s. So exiting from a SuperDuo, we're going to pick up an 11 and go directly through the first size 11 in a petal, and then you're going to peyote an 11 in the next spaces around. When we get to the other side, we're going to pass directly into the SuperDuo again. So this is really building up those petals, and as you can see, if I pull that nice and snug as I go, you can really see that petal is beginning to curve up. So the SuperDuos can be a little bit snug to get through, so a short sturdy needle is handy, or an old bent one that you can get in there, or even a curved needle can be helpful too. So I'm going straight across out of that SuperDuo into the first size 11, and you can really see how you're starting to get a lovely curve with those petals. And if they're not automatically curving, you can just gently encourage them up with your finger, or pop your little finger in to just gently encourage it to curve this way and not underneath. There we go. I'm really enjoying these colours, really vibrant, proper sunset colours. There we go. And you're just going to repeat that around. Once you're back to the beginning, we're going to step up to pass through that first size 11 that we added in the previous step. And now we're going to add some 15s, and this is our final row of the petal. So you're picking up one 15, go through the next bead in the row, pick up two 15s, and go through that next bead. So we're going to add 2 in this outer space here, and then another 2 in the next space. And 1 more in the space after. So 1, 2, 1, and then when we get to the end here, that SuperDuo is getting pretty tight, so we're going to pick up 1 15 and go directly through to the next size 11. So if you just have to manoeuvre it around till you can see, it's that first one that we added in the previous step, and that's going to pull your petals together a little bit more and prevent you having to work into that really tight SuperDuo. So I'll just show you that again. We're picking up 1, then we're going to pick up 2 between the next space. I've lost my needle again, and then 2 in the space after that, and then 1 more again. So 2 in this next space, 1 in the final space, and you might need to just hook that bead into position if you can't quite see where it is, and then 1 more and into that, stepping across to the next petal, and that also helps just pull those beads into position. And you can see how you're getting a really beautiful wavy effect there, and you can also see why I chose to use the 2 colours of beads for this one, to really show that off. But if you've done that with all one colour, that's going to really hide the work and just show off the lovely curves. So that's how we do the petals. So once you've gone all the way around, your flower component is finished, and you're ready to use it either for a brooch, as I have, or a pendant, and you can see that example here. Now I go into detail in the PDF tutorial, which you can find on my website, and I show you how to attach a brooch back or attach a bail. But really, you've got this beautiful component now that's yours to do with as you choose, and I really hope you enjoy beading it. I can't wait to see what you make. Please do tag me on Instagram or drop a picture into my bead room on Facebook, and that's the Picot Bead Room. We would love to see what you've been making. Have a great time beading, and I will see you again for more tutorials and tips over on YouTube. See you soon.